Beijing now allows couples to have up to 3 children, but the major policy shift is seeing mixed reactions. Questions circulate surrounding the pandemic lab leak theory. A video captures scientists at Wuhan's Virology Institute using lax safety precautions. Hong Kong democracy figure Jimmy Lai and other activists are getting extra prison time. That's as authorities attempt to stop a long-time Hong Kong tradition honoring the Tiananmen Square massacre. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers seized 30,000 Chinese-made necklaces. The makers claim they can protect people from the virus, but American authorities say they could actually poison people. And the family members of a Chinese dissident based in Australia may face punishment in China. Beijing is looking to silence the man by using his child as collateral. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Beijing is announcing a major change to one of its most infamous policies. On Monday, authorities revealed that married couples may now have up to 3 children, a big change to the existing limit of 2 kids, and before that, just 1. The shift comes as recent data shows a dramatic drop in birth rates in the world's most populous country.
In a major policy shift, China on Monday said it will now allow married couples to have 3 children, up from its existing limit of 2. This comes off the back of the country recording a dramatic decline in births. The change was approved during a Politburo meeting chaired by President Xi Jinping. The official news agency Xinhua reported. Earlier this month, China's once-in-a-decade census showed that the population grew at its slowest rate during the last decade since the 1950s. In a poll online with the hashtag #AreYouReady for the 3-child policy, about 29,000 of 31,000 respondents said they would never think of it, while the remainder chose the options ranging from "I'm ready and very eager to do so" to "I'm hesitating and there's a lot to consider." That poll on Xinhua's Weibo account was later removed.
Beijing's latest policy shift has prompted a range of reactions from Chinese residents. One tourist couple in Shanghai said they'd only have more kids if conditions allow for it.
Nowadays, young people have to buy a house. This amount of pressure is already huge, and then you have to consider the cost of the child's education, etc. I think this sort of policy will be difficult to implement.
Right. And we think the quality of education for our children might be an even bigger issue for having a 2nd or 3rd child.
On Chinese social media platform Weibo, internet users are hotly discussing the new policy. A new hashtag has already attracted over 400 million views. It reads, "What do you think of the 3-child policy?" The reactions are mixed. Some are positive, but the majority seem less than favorable. One person posted that they support the policy, adding that as long as you're a Chinese person, you should support the state's 3-child policy. Others are questioning the cost that comes with raising 3 children. One internet user said, "How many people nowadays can afford to raise 3 children?" Another person wrote, "I'm the 2nd child in my family and I'm 35 years old. I'm a girl and my brother is 10 years older than me. After I was born, the government fined us to the point of almost bankrupting my family. Can the state return the fine to us with interest? I can't even afford to raise my single child right now. The cost of raising 1 child plus housing loans is over $1,500 per month. And me and my husband are working extremely hard to make money. We also have to take care of our elderly parents who have ailments. Where's the support from the government?" The Chinese regime said it would provide supportive measures, but hasn't given any details. Another internet user complained about the policy shift. She wrote, "What was the regime thinking when it only allowed 1 child? Those of us that were born in the 80s are just miserable. We grew up lonely, without any siblings. And now 1 couple has to raise 4 elders in the family. Now the government allows us to have a 3rd child, so that means 2 people have to take care of 4 elderly parents and 3 children. Can you let us survive?" And it's not just Chinese residents who are questioning the policy.
Unless the government introduces real incentives, so providing special allowances to couples who have 3 children, like reduction for transportation and other incentives, I don't think that Chinese couples are going to have more kids in the coming years.
The policy is an effort to save the country's declining birth rate. In 2016, the Chinese Communist Party dropped its one-child policy, allowing couples to have 2 children. But it doesn't appear to have worked. Census data shows that 12 million babies were born in China last year. That's an 18% decline from the year before. It remains to be seen how effective the 3-child policy will be going forward. South China reported a sudden surge in CCP virus or coronavirus cases on Monday. Authorities reported around 20 new local cases in Guangdong province. NTD cannot independently verify the number, but it may be underreported as the Chinese regime has a history of covering up virus cases. Chinese state-owned media reported that the authorities found most of the officially reported cases in Guangzhou. That's the capital city of Guangdong province, and also the most populous city in South China. Among the patients in the province, authorities found both the UK variant and the Indian variant. Both can spread faster than the other strains found before. So far, local authorities have placed 2 neighborhoods in Guangzhou under lockdown. Only 1 person from each household is allowed to go out to get groceries each day. But most shops there are reportedly closed. Only some supermarkets are still open. Because of the surge in cases, airports in the region had to cancel about 500 flights as of Monday morning. All travelers taking long-distance buses to other provinces have to show a negative virus test from within 72 hours. This aims to reduce trips between provinces. Local residents can't be seen crowding on the streets to undergo mass testing. The new surge of CCP virus cases in China is driving people to get vaccinated at a faster rate. Chinese authorities said within 5 days, 100 million people got vaccinated. But are Chinese-made vaccines safe? On Friday, Chinese CDC reported a very low rate of adverse effects, saying there are only about 12 cases for every 100,000 doses. China administered about 265 million doses by the end of April, with over 31,000 cases of adverse effects. Chinese officials say most cases were mild. The regime says there are 188 severe cases, but they did not specify what the symptoms are and how the patient's conditions are. Nor did they mention if there were any deaths. But an internal report on vaccine adverse effects from one Chinese province may shed some light on the issue. The document from Hebei province's health authorities states that 9 people from the province have died from adverse effects caused by the vaccine, and 269 people remain hospitalized. Among the fatal cases, 1 is from respiratory cardiac arrest, 1 from bleeding in the brain, 1 from a heart attack, 1 from a stroke, and the causes of the other 5 deaths are yet to be determined. While Chinese officials and media outlets are largely ignoring vaccine adverse effects, Chinese netizens took to social media. One Beijing resident posted about her husband's severe allergic reaction after taking a Chinese vaccine. She said her husband has no history of allergies, but the hospital refused to give them a response whether or not the vaccine caused the symptoms. Another netizen said he suffered from sensory neural deafness days after receiving the vaccine. New comments about the pandemic emerged from the UK. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he doesn't believe the virus escaped from a Wuhan lab. He made the remarks in a Sunday interview with CBC News Canada, noting, "I think we've got to keep an open mind."
I'll be clear with you. So far, the stuff I've seen does not suggest that the number one candidate for this is a lab leak, right? So.
U.S. President Biden directed officials to work on tracing the origin of the virus. He said on Wednesday that U.S. intelligence agencies are pursuing rival theories, which may include the possibility of a lab accident in China. The conclusions of 2 likely scenarios were hotly debated and detailed in a report to Biden. The team took orders from Biden in March to detail whether the CCP virus emerged from human contact with an infected animal or from a lab accident. A top Republican makes new comments about the origin of the CCP virus, the illness that causes COVID-19. In a CNN program on Sunday, Congressman Mccaul from the House Foreign Affairs Committee called the pandemic's origin the worst cover-up in human history.
I do think it's more likely than not it emerged out of the lab, most likely accidentally, for several reasons. This is the worst cover-up in human history that we've seen, resulting in 3.5 million deaths, creating economic devastation around the globe.
Congressman Mccaul leads the House GOP's China Task Force. The group alleged last year that the Chinese Communist Party covered up the pandemic in its early stages. The statement came as part of a detailed report in September 2020, which also brought up major questions around the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In his interview, Mccaul suggested that the U.S. should pull its supply chains out of China. The penalty would punish Beijing for its actions. Last Friday, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise and more than 200 GOP lawmakers sent a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The message demanded that she greenlight probes into the Chinese virus lab and look into China's role in worsening the global situation. It explained there's mounting evidence the pandemic started in a Chinese lab and that the Chinese Communist Party covered it up. Also on Sunday, Peter Hotez, a leading expert in global health and vaccine technology, told NBC that it is absolutely critical to discover the origin of the virus.
Mother Nature is telling us what's going to happen. There's going to be COVID-26 and COVID-32 unless we fully understand the origins of COVID-19.
President Biden has asked the intelligence community to redouble its investigation effort and report their findings in 90 days. Former Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger believes that a lot can be learned in 90 days.
It's conceivable that we'll have an answer, and even if we come up short with a definitive answer, what we're going to have is a foundation for additional revelations to come out from scientists around the world.
He added that a U.S.-led global effort may embolden scientists to come forward, including those Chinese scientists who have been systematically silenced by the Chinese regime.
The U.S. is trying new ways to find the origins of the CCP virus. That's according to CNN and the New York Times. The Biden administration says they will pore over a massive amount of unexamined evidence the intelligence community collected. A White House official told CNN that the national labs will push the effort. That's a collection of 17 elite research facilities under the U.S. Energy Department. They hope to use computer analysis to achieve some breakthrough in the 90-day sprint. An official told CNN that so far there is no new collection of data the intelligence community can do. At the beginning of the outbreak, the Chinese regime issued documents to destroy virus samples and to forbid any institutes from sharing their data with foreign entities. U.S. officials say such measures have made it more difficult to trace the origins of the virus. Mainstream media in the U.S. and Europe are recently giving more credibility to the lab leak theory. This after they largely dismissed the possibility as a conspiracy theory last year. Did the CCP virus escape from the Wuhan Virology lab in China? A video showing Wuhan lab scientists' lack of safety precautions is raising some eyebrows. The video dates about 2 years prior to the pandemic. It's a news piece from China's state-owned CCTV. It shows scientists from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, or WIV, conducting field and lab research on the origins of the SARS virus. What's raising concerns is the scientists lack safety precautions. They come into close contact with live bats, sometimes with little or no personal protection equipment. This despite WIV being China's only biosafety level 4 lab. That's the highest level. Some researchers were in the Yunnan bat cave without a face mask. China's Yunnan bat cave is reportedly where coronaviruses originate. Furthermore, some lab technicians did not wear face masks while handling samples of what the video's narrator described as live viruses collected from Yunnan. In the video, scientists can also be seen holding bats with their bare hands. Some say the bats have even bitten them. The video may be able to prove that the Wuhan lab scientists did in fact get bitten by bats while researching bats carrying various coronaviruses. Hong Kong authorities are sentencing media tycoon and Beijing critic Jimmy Lai to another 14 months in prison. That's because he joined a pro-democracy rally in 2019.
Hong Kong handed down a new prison sentence to jailed media tycoon and Beijing critic Jimmy Lai on Friday. A van believed to be carrying him and 9 other defendants was seen entering the court this morning. Lai was sentenced to 14 months over his role in an unauthorized assembly on October 1st, China's National Day, during Hong Kong's pro-democracy rallies 2 years ago. The other 9 activists were sentenced to up to 18 months. All 10 had earlier this month pled guilty in a lower court to organizing an unauthorized assembly. One activist's spouse condemned Friday's outcome.
I think this is a very heavy sentence, and it is a very big threat to Hong Kongers' right to peaceful assembly and protest, which is guaranteed in the Basic Law.
Since December, Lai has already been serving sentences adding up to 14 months for participating in similar demonstrations in 2019. The judge who delivered Lai's sentence on Friday said part of the new sentence would be served concurrently. That means Lai faces a total of 20 months in prison so far. Lai's repeated arrests have drawn criticism from Western governments and international rights groups, who raised concerns over waning freedoms in the city. China imposed the national security law in 2020 in response to the protests. That punishes anything Beijing considers as subversion, secession, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces, with up to life in prison. Lai, who Beijing sees as a traitor, faces 3 more charges under that law.
Hong Kong police on Sunday also arrested another democracy activist known as Grandma Wang. That's after the 65-year-old staged a lone demonstration to commemorate China's bloody Tiananmen Square massacre. Alexandra Wang was seen holding a placard referring to the 1989 incident before police approached her and took her away. Hong Kong is known for its annual tradition of holding assemblies and vigils to memorialize the massacre. 32 years ago, the Chinese regime sent out tanks and opened fire on unarmed student protesters gathered at Beijing's Tiananmen Square. They assembled to ask for democracy and uncensored access to education. The events in Hong Kong have for years drawn the ire of the Chinese Communist Party. But this year, police barred the annual march and June 4th candlelight vigil, which often draws over 100,000 people. Police cited pandemic restrictions. Hong Kong and Beijing authorities have recently tightened their grip over any events that paint Beijing in a bad light. That's after Beijing forced a strict national security law on the city last year. It deems protests and all events critical of the Chinese Communist Party illegal. Right now, close to 50 Hong Kong opposition politicians and activists are facing the possibility of life in prison. Hong Kong courts have charged them with subversion. That's because some of them intended to block bills issued by Hong Kong's government, while others sought to force the city's top leader, who is controlled by the CCP, to step down. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, officers announced that they seized 30,000 Chinese-made necklaces that the makers claim protect people from the CCP virus or coronavirus. The CBP says the fraudulent necklaces could poison people. The CBP statement says the necklaces claim to create an antibacterial cloud around them. The necklaces have a small packet filled with chlorine dioxide. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says exposure to chlorine dioxide can cause severe breathing difficulties, as well as irritation to the eyes, nose, and throat. The CBP statement says the false wares were intercepted from a tractor trailer filled with counterfeit merchandise on its way to Mexico. They estimate the necklaces sell for $16 a piece, and the total value of the seized goods exceed $500,000. U.S. authorities levy a new ban on seafood imports, specifically from one Chinese company. The move comes amid forced labor concerns. The Customs and Border Protection Agency says the company Dalian Ocean Fishing is using forced labor aboard its 32 vessels, reportedly via many Indonesian workers. Close to a dozen indicators of forced labor have been identified, including physical violence, withholding wages, abusive working and living conditions, and more. CBP will now detain tuna, swordfish, and other products supplied by the company at U.S. ports of entry. The order also applies to the company's consumer products that contain seafood, like canned tuna and pet food. America's top military leader, General Mark Milley, says Beijing is boosting its military advancement. He is pointing out that the Chinese military has developed a very significant capability in the last 40 years.
They are not our peer or near peer just yet, but they are rapidly growing, and their objective is by probably the mid-2030s for sure by mid-century, to be equal to or greater than the United States militarily.
Milley explains that Beijing is advancing rapidly. He lists areas like space, cyber warfare, maritime tactics, and combat by air and ground. He called Communist China a very significant competitor to the United States and reiterated that Beijing's goal is to become a military equal. Family members of a Chinese dissident based in Australia may face punishment in China. The Chinese regime is seeking to silence him by using his child in China as collateral.
Chinese authorities are threatening Australia-based dissident Liang Haibin, saying that his family in China will have a hard time if he continues to blast the Communist Party.
If I watch my own government commit crimes but dare not raise any doubts or criticize it, or even support the CCP without any principles, that's a sin.
Liang used to work as a sailor for a Chinese state-owned shipping company. He exposed the dark side of China's shipping industry early last year and fled from China to Australia later that year. But his child is still living in China. The regime found his family and asked them for his contact information after he had left China. Liang called the local police security department in China asking them to leave his family alone. Chinese police told him if he refuses to keep silent, his child will face consequences such as restricted access to schooling and employment. That's because the regime's policy requires it.
I have to oppose the CCP even more because of this policy. My heart is aching because the Chinese people have been mistreated.
The police chief warned Liang against making any anti-communist and anti-socialist remarks. That is, if he still wants to go back to China.
You, the party, have deceived the people, trampled on human rights, and are above the law. The Constitution allows me to exercise my rights.
Liang told the Epoch Times in February about his experience working in China's shipping industry. He revealed that Chinese authorities banned sailors from returning to China since the pandemic hit. Liang noted that his working conditions were dangerous and his boss did not even pay him for 7 months last year. The Chinese police chief is now asking Liang when he would return to China. To avoid persecution, Liang has applied for refugee status in Australia. Liang says he is determined to fight against the Chinese communist regime until the end, no matter what it takes. He is hoping that the international community can pay attention to his case.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, China in Focus is partnering with the Epoch Times newspaper on their new subscription-based streaming platform, Epoch TV. That's where you can watch our exclusive special reports, like this one, every Friday night. In them, we'll explore questions like how China lures in foreign companies to steal their technology, how the Chinese regime is actively collecting health data on people around the world, how the ancient Chinese philosophy of good governance differs from the current-day communist regime, and much more. Be sure to check out these investigative episodes by clicking on the link in the description down below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you really want to understand what's happening with China. You can still watch our Monday to Thursday episodes for free on YouTube, NTD Cable TV, the NTD website, and the Epoch TV website. In our latest special report this past Friday, we discuss Beijing's ambition over one of the most sensitive types of data, DNA. The Chinese Communist Party is allegedly collecting DNA around the world. That is through a state-linked company offering COVID-19 testing assistance to other countries, granting it access to people's biometric data.
They are the ultimate company that shows connectivity to both the communist state as well as the military apparatus.
The company has been working with the Chinese military as Beijing looks to weaponize artificial intelligence and gene editing, and not just for domestic control, but also to further its global ambitions.
China has 2 million strong in its military, and it's trying to make them stronger through gene editing.
I hope that our actions can surpass the industrial age and allow China to lead the world for the next 100 years of development.
How far has China already gotten in building its genetic data trove, and what would its success mean for the world? We explore these questions and more in a new special report on China's DNA ambitions. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.